for being here today and your willingness to support, and we will begin the meeting.
So, Madam President, I've shared the agenda. Are you able to see that on the screen? Excellent. So we call to order and we can move on to approval of minutes. I'll scroll down to those. Everyone received this in their packet, of course.
Yes.
So the motion is request to approve the minutes.
Yes, as he does so, asking everyone to just take a look at the minutes as Steve has already informed us that you've received them. Are there any corrections or typos that anyone wishes to bring to our consciousness today? Anything for us to be aware of?
I believe Director Carroll had her hand up.
Yes, Director Carroll.
Thank you. Just a very minor typo, but it made me pause when I read it because I didn't understand what it was talking about when I first read through it. The paragraph that is the third paragraph down that begins with FFE coordinator Steve Brown provided a staff report. At the very end, if you could correct leaning hubs to learning hubs, that will be great. Very minor, but it just made me, I was like, what? I don't remember us talking about leaning hubs, and what does that mean?
Right, it's learning hubs.
Thank you, Director Carroll, for your keen eye.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any others? Hearing none, I would love to entertain a motion to approve and accept the meeting minutes from September 14th, 2020, the Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Washington.
Support.
Thank you, Director Taylor. As the motion has been properly moved and supported, is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, just to clarify what I'm requesting the motion was approval of the 2020 meeting minutes from September 14th with the correction from Director Carroll. Clive, do we need to do that again? My apologies.
No, you did fine.
Okay. All in favor, please answer with aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you all. Reports and communications.
Thank you, Madam President. We today have two presentations which will be held back to back. One we've called a stakeholder conversation with Affordable Housing Director Stephanie Hoffman, and one is a staff communication which will feature Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb, and as a guest today, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, Rebecca Kick. I'll bring up a PowerPoint presentation as I'm speaking, and the background on this is, if everyone's able to see the PowerPoint now, stakeholder conversation. Excellent. The background on this is in conversation with Director Hoffman during onboarding and training in her role as a new board member. There's a keen interest in exploring the landscape, really, of affordable housing in Kalamazoo. It's an area of significant investment, which helps us achieve or work toward achieving numerous city and Foundation for Excellence goals. And it's really top of mind for so many service providers, so many families, so many individuals in the city. So just as a very brief background there, we decided to open up the opportunity for stakeholder conversation. And we haven't done this before, but it's maybe an exciting precedent as well to dig into the area that Director Hoffman is kind of representing on the board from the city. So what I've brought up here are some top level discussion points that Director Hoffman would like to cover. And then I think there's ample time really for question and answer. We'll probably also, if we get to specifics, maybe parking lot specifics that we know we're going to get to under the staff presentation, which would regard particular areas of funding, particular areas of policy or investment or city work. So with that, Director Hoffman, if you are able to hear me and unmute your audio, thank you very much for taking this opportunity to share with us today.
Could I just jump in, Director Hoffman, very quickly for something very minor?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I do not want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to let the board know just it's when we are when the slideshow is on the screen, I'm only able to see a couple of you at a time. And so very often some of you will have your hand raised and I can't see and I have to constantly scroll through. And if you have questions for Director Hoffman, and this is also a question for you, Director Hoffman, would you mind if someone just said their name so that I could recognize them as opposed to missing so many of your comments?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that agreed with the board? Does everybody feel comfortable doing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My apologies, Director Hoffman. Please proceed and thank you. I'm so excited about you. I've been looking so forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Madam President, and Steve. Thank you so much for allowing me to have this space. Anyone who knows me knows that housing is like water to me. And so whenever I get an opportunity to talk about the work that is happening within our community, and I'm not going to just relegate it to the city, because a lot of the things that's happening in the city has spurred growth throughout the county. And so a big ups to the city of Kalamazoo, because we have been leading the way as it pertains to housing and really addressing some of those things within our entire county. A little bit about Open Doors. So we were started in 1970. And for those who are from here, you may remember we used to be called Kalamazoo Youth Ministry. And when we were created really as a drop-in center for young boys, young men that were in school, who kind of just mingling around town and didn't really have a place to go. And so there were a group of Reformed church deacons who said, you know what? These kids are coming to the church. So how can the church come out of the four walls and go to them? And what they did back in 1970 was really kind of like a revolutionary way of thinking. What they said is, okay, we want to go there. We just want to get to know them and tell us how may we serve you. So they didn't go to the community with this top-down approach. Do this and your life will be better. It was more relational. And I promise you, from that time until today, that is truly what we still do, that foundation. If you take a look at our mission statement, it states, we are building relationships to overcome homelessness through diversity, equity, and inclusion in response to God's love for all. And that all, is so important because it really means all. And so when I think about what we do at Open Doors, it gives me goosebumps all the time. We say all the time, we have good days and better days, never a bad day. We have good days and better days. And so there are two components. And for 34 years, Open Doors did shelter for young adults from the ages of 18 to 35. Many of those young kids at that time and young adults were going through really serious life transitions, such as addiction issues, not being able to get along with family members, with parents. And so there was definitely a need to create a space for young men. And within a year, we saw that young women were experiencing the same level of need as it pertained to shelter, and that was supportive services. So for 34 years, that's all we did. And in 2004, we got in the business of doing affordable housing with supportive services, really to meet the needs of our shelter guests who did everything we asked them to do in shelter. And that was one, you have to get a job. You will never be able to sustain permanent housing without having a source of income, and that income being employment, because we believe employment, there's room for growth, right? And so the other piece was that you have to save money and start learning how to manage money better. And the third thing was, we need you to be clean and sober. We cannot think clearly when we're under the influence of many things, right? So those three things were the foundation of our shelter program, and we did it very well for 34 years. Our guests, and we call people who come and stay with Open Doors guests because they choose to come there. They don't have to. They're willing to trust us to help and lead and partner with them in a way. And so we never say we have clients at Open Doors. We have shelter guests and we have residents within our residence community. And so when I think about the way we talk about our brothers and sisters in our community, our vernacular speaks power, or it speaks weakness. And so whenever we speak about the people we serve, we're going to always speak power and life into their situations. And so we've done that, and they did everything we asked them to do. They got employment, they were saving money, they were clean, they were dealing with some things and creating new, better habits, letting go of old habits. And yet when it was time for them to move out, there was no place for them to go. And so back in 2004 through 2008, our recidivism rate back in the shelter was super high. And so our then executive director, Rick Stravers, had this vision of what would it look like if we created housing opportunities for our shelter guests. And so that's what we stepped out on faith. And we had a donor that came in and bought us a property, a 4-unit property. And we began doing affordable housing. And it's not because we wanted to be landlords. I tell people all the time, we are not landlords. We are shelter providers who happen to do affordable housing now. And we've been doing that now for 16 years. When I first joined Open Doors, we had about 16 units, and 8 of those units were shared housing. That meant our guests and our residents had a locked bedroom but shared common areas. To date, we have about 104 units of affordable housing throughout central Kalamazoo. And we are serving people in a way that gives them life, opportunity, and a sense of purpose and value. One of the first things we ask when we meet a family or individual coming or wanting to partner with Open Doors, because it's all about the partnership and relationship, is who are you? And oftentimes for men and women, they'll say, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I work here, I go to church here. And then I'm like, that's really great, but who are you? And then by the third time, you see tears because they've oftentimes forgotten who they were, or they were never told who they were. And so what we try to do is really from the beginning, start building this relationship to say, you know what? Here's what we want you to know at Open Doors. You matter. No matter who you are, where you're from, you matter. And your circumstances, they do not define who you are as a being on the earth. And that's the beginning of partnership and transformation. And so we're able to do that. And currently we are serving 140 individuals, and 35% of those individuals are children. They are under the age of 18. And that's huge, because initially when we started, it was specifically for single adults. We were not serving families with children, but in 2011, at that time, I was shelter manager. I recognized we had women who had the ability to get custody of their children back from the system. The only thing holding them up was housing. And so we acquired a 27-unit property in 2011 on the corner of Lovell and Pearl Street. It's Cooper Apartments, 2 lovely buildings, beautiful gardens. And that's when we began serving families with children. And that has been our focus of housing primarily since 2011. And so when I think about the individuals that we serve, many of them are coming out of incarceration now. Many have a bruised criminal background, not anything major or violent, but just having that criminal background, it creates a huge barrier. And so what we decided to do at Open Doors, we understand the population that we want to partner with. And so we do not do criminal backgrounds. We understand some things may have happened. We have open dialogue and conversation. So tell us your truth and we will honor that. And in those areas when laws will not prohibit us to be able to serve them, we will work with that family or individual to find them somewhere else that can. And so when we talk about housing accessibility, that's a huge barrier. We do not charge application fee. For what? Why do we need to do that? We have the ability to sit down and create real, authentic dialogue and be truthful with each other. And that's what I love about us. We don't make this thing so hard that it's unattainable.
Right.
And so I'll take a pause right now to see if there are any questions for anybody. or from anybody?
I have a quick question, Director Hoffman. I apologize. Did anybody have their hand up in advance? I didn't see anyone. My question is there any circumstance that precludes someone from being appropriate for your services?
Absolutely, yes. So when I talk about partnership, that's exactly what I mean. And so when we got into the business of doing affordable housing, it was to create a safe space for individuals who were coming out, they were coming out of addiction and really strong in their recovery. And so if an individual or family is struggling with addiction and they are not ready to make that move, then we will not at that time be able to serve them, because we have a host of other families that are working hard every single day to stay clean, to stay sober, and to stay strong in their recovery. Since we have grown so much, and we don't only serve people that come through our shelter programs, and with the passing of certain laws now, some things are, they say, well, God created weed. He created marijuana. It's like basil, but you ain't smoking basil, right? So for us, we see marijuana as a gateway drug. And we have seen the effects of families being affected in a way that has been detrimental. So for us, drug use on the property is unacceptable for us. And I know that's a hard line to toe. In those instances where a family or individual is already living with us and they happen to relapse, we immediately jump in and say, okay, what do we need to do? What happened? What were your triggers? What were you dealing with that you did not share? And how to move forward? So it's not an immediate eviction. We give that family and or individual an opportunity to get back on their feet. What do we need to do? Do we need to find rehab? Do we need to make sure that you have a stronger sponsor? Things like that. But initially, if we know that individuals are partaking and they don't have the desire just yet to quit, we say we'll love you from a distance and we'll help you in any other way. But this is not the right time for you to join and come into partnership with us.
Thank you.
So as I stated, we have about 104 units of affordable housing throughout the central Kalamazoo. We have been wanting to expand out into Portage and into the townships, because not every family wants to live within the city. They love some of their school districts. And so we're looking at opportunities and ways that we may be able to bring more affordable housing to areas outside of the city. That leads me into what we're working on right now with housing equity with TRHT. And Isaac they have been very strong supporters and partners with us in this housing work. And just a side note, October 22nd will be our public meeting where our housing task force, the anti-racism task force, and the gun violence task force will bring forth community leaders and city officials and county officials to ask certain questions about how do we partner together with government and with nonprofits to address some of the issues that are happening within our community. When I think about what we were able to do with the city of Kalamazoo with the housing equity ordinance, and now that we're working on a county millage, everything is happening, I believe, in divine order. Because once we get this through the county, that is going to open up funding that we will be able to leverage and really bring more dollars into our community, and that the city of Kalamazoo as well will be able to access, right? As we do more affordable housing, I can tell you guys right now, there are 2 developments happening right now that are in the process of being built. The Creamery, which is 48 units of housing, 38 of those units are at 30% or below. So it will really reach deeper for those individuals who are low income, which is phenomenal. And then we have the Harrison Circle project that will bring 80 units of housing, and 44 units in that development will be from 30 to 60% of area median income, which is another huge number. So you're looking right now at about 92 units of affordable housing coming to the city of Kalamazoo within the next 18 to 24 months. And so when I think about that, that is huge. That is huge. Yet then we have this number over here before COVID happened, where local agencies identified over 700 individuals that were dealing with homelessness. And once COVID hit, that really was a game changer, which prompted us in the nonprofit housing sector to say, wait a minute, what can we do together and collectively and get on the same page and really bring and lift up the importance of what housing is and should be for everyone who desires to live in traditional housing. They should have that opportunity. And so with the housing equity ordinance and removing some of those barriers, and now we're adding in the county millage where we will be able to not only do subsidies, but we will be able to literally put more units of housing in our community and throughout the county is phenomenal. And I'm nervous, so you guys be praying for us, because as we get closer and closer to November 3rd, my anxiety is rising. But I believe that we live in a community right now that many of us have awakened, and we are at a place where we see the value in everybody. And in the words of Isaac, we are working hard to create the beloved community in Kalamazoo County, which encompasses everybody. And so, so many good things are happening. I felt the need to share a little bit about what is happening in the housing sector because it's so important. And every sector represented on this board, if your individuals in your sectors don't have housing, there's no foundation. There's no foundation. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit with you guys about what's happening in the housing sector. I have to give a shout out to United Way and to Kalamazoo Community Foundation for their urgent relief fund that supported so many nonprofits as we were doing this work during the pandemic, and they continue to support. What I have learned about Kalamazoo is when things get tough, we come together and we remove superficial barriers to make people's lives better. And so it is my hope and prayer that we will continue on this trajectory. We don't need to go back when we have 58 forms for one thing. We have shown that people matter and people are worthy, and we can do it together. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share just a small snippet about what's happening in the housing sector.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, I stopped the share just for a moment in case there's easier for Q&A. I realize how tough it is when everybody's just looking at the PDF. So.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Director Hoffman. I am inspired and galvanized by your thorough presentation and explanation about Open Doors and the journey and where you are now. And I just thank you so much for coming before us. I've been really looking forward to it. I am really interested in your housing meeting. So perhaps you could, as the time grows near, is there a communication that you could send out for how we could join those of us who are interested? I just want to be there. I want to be in support. I want to stand in solidarity with the wonderful work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yes. I'll make sure that I'll send it out to Mr. Brown and make sure he gets it out to everybody who wants to attend. For sure.
Please do. Thank you. I can't wait to attend. I just love all the changes that, as you mentioned, that the city and the county and the foundations and the elected officials and our servant leaders who are coming together. The work that you're doing certainly does matter and it's having an impact. And I just can't wait to see the lives that will be changed through your efforts. So thank you so much.
I am just excited
Director
to be a
Ritsum, I
part
have
of
his hand
this.
up.
So.
Yeah, just thank you, Director Hoffman. And one question I have is, are there supportive services and partners that provide those services for folks that are residents in your units that help them gain other skills to keep their housing and to improve themselves and their families?
That's a wonderful question. And my answer is yes. Yes. What we say at Open Doors is the easy part. We have an empty unit. The easy part is getting you in there. The hard work begins once you get in there. And how do we build a plan with you and your children to help you sustain, grow, and move on. The goal is not for you to stay with Open Doors forever. We believe 2 to 5 years through partnership, families who have a desire to become homeowners, we will be able to help you get to that next level. And that's why we partner with KNHS, Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services. We actually had one of our longtime residents. She had been with us for 9 years, and it took 9 years for her to get credit in order, to get a stable job, to just save money and to clean up credit. And she purchased and closed right before the stay-at-home order went through. And so that was super powerful, you know. And so my thing is, when we talk about low-income families and moving from homelessness to home ownership, that journey may take 9 years. And we as a community have to be able and willing to invest the time and resources for organizations to have the capacity to work one-on-one with those families to get them to that dream of having home ownership. And so when we talk about home ownership and the pathway, you know, there is definitely a journey and a path that we can create. We are creating, as a matter of fact, where we will really influence the number of people of color households who will now be able to become homeowners within the next 5 years. So supportive services is key to what we do when we think about barriers that our low-income families are dealing with. One huge one is childcare, out of pocket. A second one is transportation needs. When the car breaks down, what do? Well, we created a subsidy where we can pay half of that repair cost so that family can continue going to work and not lose their housing. When we think about ACEs, childhood traumas, we as a staff and board did a training to really see what does that really mean? And as a board and staff, we had a huge number, which was bananas. Nobody thought it would be that. So if we are experiencing these as providers, let's be real and serve our people in a way that is filled with dignity and respect, and start talking from a holistic standpoint. So our supportive services is key. And one of the things that we are pushing for at the county level is when we do the supportive services and the rental subsidies moving forward, there will be an intentional supportive services model added to that.
Is there any, as you're talking about capacity and the need versus what is available, it's always going to be a disparity there. And I am just curious, and I don't want to belabor this, and perhaps if I have more questions, I'll contact you offline, but I do want to ask something that I think that is really relevant. Do you partner with Open Door with private citizens who are landlords? Is there any space for that? Does that occur? Or is it really, do you try to maintain the process in-house because of the services that you're able to provide? I'm just curious about what happens when your wait list exceeds your the resources.
Yep, we try to maintain everything in-house because we believe that relationship piece is so critical to a family's ability to transition and move from trauma and pain to life and thriving, right? And the truth of the matter is, Madam President, is we don't have enough housing units throughout the entire county. We don't have enough units. And property owners and landlords have the ability right now to be very selective. And so when you think about many of the people that are suffering with housing insecurity and homelessness, they are people of color. And so there is a racial inequity component to that. And so I believe with the work we're doing with Isaac and TRHT and other nonprofits and United Way and the foundation coming together, we're now able to have these very hard discussions and begin to create solutions together to address them.
Madam President, Director Lomberg has her hand up.
I just saw it. I apologize, Director Lomberg. Please.
No
proceed.
worries. And I just want to name, in part in response to Director Ritzma's question, how many community partners Open Doors has. I mean, in addition to Isaac, in addition to TRHT, I know my little congregation on the edge of town is, rehabbing apartments and giving our modest check when we can. And so many other organizations are. There's tutors, there's all kinds of amazing supportive community efforts that Stephanie is leading us in. And if you're not connected, I encourage you to be in all of your different sectors and skill sets.
And thank you so much, Director Lomberg, for that, because we cannot do this work alone. No one nonprofit can change anything by itself. No one sector can change anything. So thank you for saying that. We have phenomenal supporters and that help us do this work together. So it's not just open doors, trust me.
Director Hopewell.
Yeah, thank you. Director Hoffman, thank you for the presentation. I've been to your sites a couple of times and very impressed with the amazing work you're doing in the partnerships. My question is for you and maybe the mayor in regards to how the homeless millage, or I know the mayor has an effort in his work life regarding veterans and housing and things of that nature. I just wondered if there's a connection. Now, maybe staff's going to report on that in this next piece. I don't know. But that was on.
Mayor, would you like to take that?
So Mayor, we're talking about veteran housing in particular?
Yes.
Okay, condition. Well, there is a renewed focus on that. The Public Housing Commission, of which I'm a member, just opened up a veteran-specific shelter, which is over on Stockbridge. So that is something we actually were talking about for a couple of years before we finally got it open. But that is open and running. There's going to be it's already open, but there's going to be kind of a grand opening Zoom style presentation on that. It's going to come up in November. But that is also a collaborative model between all the veteran serving organizations in town. So that's been very successful in terms of getting to veterans. And we're not, we are expanding the definition of veteran. For example, the Veterans Service Office and some of the resources that are available there are only for honorably discharged veterans. So we're expanding that to anyone who's been in military service. So that is open and operating. That's also a collaboration between ISK, where I work, where we have someone from ISK that's staffing that over on Stockbridge. So that kind of work is happening.
The beauty also about this millage that we've been working very hard on the last couple of months is we will be able to provide housing throughout the county of Kalamazoo. Oftentimes, when we think about homelessness, it comes to the city of Kalamazoo and it stays right there. And so I have been preaching, yelling, screaming that this is not a city of Kalamazoo issue alone, that the county has to get some skin in the game and make some stuff happen. And in a wonderful way, it has come together. And so when we think about what this new millage will provide once passed, and I encourage everybody to flip it over. It's the last initiative on the back of the ballot, and just color it in really, really dark. So there is no way they will mistake and not count your vote. I'm just saying. What I really want to say is, so we went in 2015, we did the Vote Yes for Kids millage, and that was a 0.1 millage that provided rental subsidies for families with school-age children that was suffering from homelessness. And it was really, 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 really good for about 500. By the time it's all done, it might be a little over 500 families. However, in these last 5 years, we've seen our homeless population grow exponentially. And so we began to have these meetings, and with Dave Artley leading the charge, we were able to push that we not only do we need a new and expanded millage that will provide homes for all, it needs to be more, and we need to make sure that we have that millage spread out in a way that every district in the county, which every commissioner said they had a housing crisis within their within their district, that we spread the love around. and not make this a city of Kalamazoo issue. Of course, Kalamazoo will be beneficiaries of that, and we will do things here within the city, but it has never been a city of Kalamazoo issue. It's been a countywide issue, and I'm so grateful that we have been able to get it thus far. The other piece is we're looking at expanding housing for older adults, persons with disabilities, and we're talking about physical accessibility, building and rehabbing and renovating and creating new units of housing. And when you think about us asking 0.75 now, that's a huge number coming from 0.1. We need that amount of money to be able to garner more federal and state funds to put more units on the ground. It's expensive. And just to give you an example, Ann Arbor is working on a housing millage as well. And they asked for a full point over 20 years. So you're talking about over $100 million that they will be able to use to create housing opportunities for all as well. So this is not something that Kalamazoo is noticing and doing alone. We have other communities throughout the state who see housing as a fundamental right, and we have to do something locally to make it happen. So, okay, I'm on my soapbox now, but I'm done.
May I just ask a quick question, Stephanie, of you? So correct me if I'm wrong. I think when you were talking about the overall number of clients, guests that you currently have, it was roughly over 100, and it sounded like at least 30 of those were children. That's obviously those numbers are very upsetting at any rate. What I would like to ask you about, and I think a couple of the other members have also mentioned, about other community-based organizations that you're currently working with, specifically the Ywca, earlier the Edison Center. Super excited about here at the Creamery with the affordable housing opportunities, as well as with the Ywca Edison Center now going to provide 24-hour care and meeting some of those non-traditional needs for people who aren't working from regular 8 to 5 hours. So a couple different things. One, I wanted to ask about your relationship with the Ywca, if you're able to speak on that. And then two, I would also ask that the board please consider setting up, maybe we could talk about this at some time, with Nicole Bloom, who is the early learning program manager or director there at the Ywca, about the services that they're going to be providing at the new Edison Center and how maybe those services can wrap around into some of the things that the foundation is already investing in.
Yes, thank you so much for your question. So when I talked about the 100 units of housing, that was 100 units of apartment living that we provide, and we provide, so those families and individuals are already in a unit. So those are not relegated to our shelter program at all. And our families, so 35% of those are school-age children now. Given where we are right now, it's been hard on parents, but it's been much easier for kids to be at home. And what we've seen as a challenge, and not a challenge, but how do we make this work for our employees at Open Doors who have school-age children where they are not stressed out about, I gotta be at the office. So we have done many things. And I think that is a key piece to making all of this work. It goes back to relationship. And so our relationship with the Ywca has been, there have been times where we have kind of swapped guests in our shelter program that made it make sense. And we have supported some of their families through housing. And so there is an informal relationship there. When we have a unit, we try to get with HRI, we try to get with Ministry of Community, we try to get with the Ywca and say, listen, we have a unit. Before we go to the list, do you have a family or individual? The only thing that's lacking is housing. And if that's the case, then we have the ability as a nonprofit and privately ran nonprofit to make those kind of creative choices to support a family that is already getting wraparound services with another organization in town. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yes, a little bit. And actually, I think that maybe that there would be maybe some services that your employees or guests could really look into with the YWCA and see if there isn't some more opportunities for maybe even a more formal partnership.
There was a time where Director Lomberg took me on a tour of the YWCA's facility. And this was at the beginning before the creamery even got started. And I love what they are doing as it relates to children. They do some really, really good things. And we were thinking at Open Doors, maybe we should get into business because we are very protective of our residents and shelter guests. So if we can do it all in-house, well, we can't do everything. So I know that I will have to open up my mind a little bit more and say, you can trust other organizations who care about people as well.
Director Miller, did you want to say something? Okay. Thank you again, Director Hoffman, for your presentation. You have inspired us all, and thank you not just for your presentation, but all you do.
Madam President, I can bring up the PowerPoint again, and we have, I feel bad that just the speaker can be seen. So, but should I leave the slide up and then we have DCM Lamb and Director Kick kind of speak in turn, or is it better that I bring it up and then take it off so everyone can see?
Whatever is more convenient. You always do a great job. I trust your judgment.
Okay. Seeing no mutinies, I will share my screen here. Back to the PowerPoint. And so Deputy City Manager Lamb and Director Kick have, I'm going to leave this slide up. This is a broad strokes overview, and I know that they have notes prepared. And so Laura or Rebecca, as you're presenting, feel free to just tell me to unscreen share if this has really outlived its usefulness and you'd rather that the directors be able to kind of see and interact. And certainly at Q&A, I can take this down as well. But this is, yep, the only housing slide. So with that, I will hand it over to Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb.
Thank you. I also want to say thanks to Director Hoffman. When you mentioned in Open Doors that you say you have good days and better days, it seems to me that many will agree you make all of our days better in Kalamazoo, and I'm so grateful that you've joined our board. Mm-hmm. Last year, I came to speak to you all about really a plan for unprecedented levels of funding towards affordable housing. I'd like to come back to you to talk a little bit more about what we've done and our desire to continue on with that level of investment, to continue the good work and in some cases enhance it, really towards this goal of providing housing for all in Kalamazoo. My intent is to speak very briefly to kind of the overall strategy, and then Director Rebecca Kick will kind of go into a little more specifics on the programs and the projects. So as Director Hoffman indicated, we have very ambitious goals in our community around housing. I think to ensure that these goals are attainable, there's a couple of things we really need to keep in mind. Starting off, it's partnership. A lot of this I'm going to touch on very lightly because Stephanie just queued it up so well, I don't even need to go back into detail. But we need to be about partnership. We really need to be person-centered. We need to consider a portfolio approach to projects, an all-encompassing portfolio approach. We need to be prepared, and we need to invest in preparedness. We need to bring forward creative and effective policy, and we need to leverage resources. And by resources, I mean time, talent, and treasure. As we think about partnership, we really came to you a little bit last year to talk about the thought of the Continuum of Care moving from the Local Initiative Support Corporation to the United Way. That transition has since happened. The Continuum of Care is now fully staffed. And this, as you may recall, is the local planning body, action body, tasked with coordinating funding coming in and activities really focused on helping people secure stable housing in our community. The Continuum of Care really started their transition in spring, right about the time that COVID was hitting fast and furious in our community. And they were largely responsible for mobilizing shelter providers, mobilizing housing providers, and working closely with Housing Resources Incorporated to really open up an entire temporary housing within one of our local hotels and operating that successfully for multiple weeks. I really can't imagine, to be quite honest, what we would have done if they hadn't stepped into the role when they did. We as FFE are pleased to be a part of that transition and part of that support and enhancements that it's afforded our community. So in addition to partnership, this idea of being person-centered, again, Stephanie mentioned it so beautifully with Open Doors model, but really making sure that as we think about service delivery, we put people at the center and make sure that we're thinking about it from that perspective. What does it take to meet people where they are and help them get to where they're going? As part of our relationship with the Continuum of Care, they are working with Integrated Services Kalamazoo to start up a low barrier shelter, certainly a way to help people access housing as quickly as possible, meet them where they are, and then work with them on their recovery. And we're getting excited about seeing what that will look like later this year and into next year as that launches. This idea of a portfolio approach, as we think about projects popping up around the downtown, around Kalamazoo and the county, how do we be sure that what's being built addresses the needs that we see in our community, the number of units, the style of units, to make sure that we've got that match happening. This idea of preparedness, who would have known last year when we were talking about the need to have a disaster relief fund, urgent relief fund, who would have known how much we would need it and how much we continue to need it. It just makes good sense when we think about housing. It is often those without housing that are almost always going to suffer the worst of the worst. So how do we continue to recognize that, invest accordingly, that we have resources that can be deployed fast, efficiently for those in the greatest need? This idea about creative and effective policy, something that Stephanie also touched upon. The City Commission recently approving the Civil Rights Ordinance and the Fair Housing Ordinance helps remove barriers that tenants are facing, helps add protected classes to our anti-discrimination ordinance. We see these policies in place combined with other resources to help people access housing. Another pilot that we're working on with in partnership with the Continuum of Care is to look at removing the barrier of security deposits for hopefully up to 300 tenants, help them remove that barrier and look for ways to incentivize partnering with landlords. So we are continually trying to remove barriers and try to find the most effective way to incentivize this partnership to happen, get people into housing as quickly as possible. And lastly, Rebecca will certainly also speak to some of the policy changes happening by way of our zoning. We recognize with zoning is kind of is a bad word in many cases. We realize there are some serious wrongs that have to be righted. And with the master plan, with our Imagine Kalamazoo strategic vision, we've got a staff and team listening to community, working with community to right past wrongs and use zoning code as actually an effective tool to right past wrongs and to get our vision implemented in the way that we hear our community asking for it. And lastly, this idea of leveraging resources. We are so grateful to have the resources available to us through the Foundation for Excellence, but it's never going to be enough. The numbers are always going to be bigger than what we think we can tackle. So how are we leveraging funding with our local partners, our funding partners? How are we leveraging funding through the Michigan State Housing Development Authority? How are we doing everything we can to bring resources to bear to really address this Housing for All goal? So with that, I will hand it over to Director Kick, and she can go into far more detail, and we can certainly tag team any questions that you all have where we can dig a little bit deeper.
Thank you so much, Laura, for queuing that up. And I'm so grateful to have Stephanie as a mentor and as someone that I get to collaborate with on these awesome dreams. So just know that everything I'm about to talk to you about has come from amazing roots such as Isaac and TRHT and listening to the community and really trying to think about how we change internally as a city to respond in the best possible way to the community. And it's made a lot of this work feel like it's taking forever, but know that it's constantly going. All of our staff are constantly moving, but it's a journey that we want to take the community on. It's not something that you just make that leap into, right? Because when Stephanie talked about the top-down piece of how we used to do work, that's not how we want this to look, feel, or even replicate, right? We truly want this to come from the grassroots up. And so we've changed a lot. And I'm sure when some of you see these words, strategic site acquisition, you're like, what in the world is the city doing? Are they running around and buying up land? And what does that mean? That's not it at all. What strategic site acquisition was, it was a bit of a brainchild that was born out of a fellowship that I did with the Arcus Center, and I was extremely blessed to have Mia Henry as my mentor during that fellowship. During the fellowship, I was able to really take a deeper dive into what a community land trust is, how community land trusts started, and what that really meant for wealth building and community partnerships in terms of land ownership. And so what I started to do is work with our core neighborhood leaders, Maddie Jordan Woods, Pat Taylor, Tammy Taylor of the Edison neighborhoods. And we use these dollars in these neighborhoods with Imagine Kalamazoo, with their neighborhood plans, and we gave them as grants back to those neighborhood leaders so they could acquire land, so that they could see their neighborhood plans come to fruition. They knew what that land needed to be used for. And so we've given over $400,000 to the Northside neighborhood for land acquisition. This also includes the Tiny Homes project and that land. We worked in partnership, and we are still working in partnership with the East Side neighborhood on two very large parcels. One, which was the former Dairy Queen property, and laundromat as well. And so we're working with the East Side Neighborhood Association on acquiring that property. And then along the river is an abandoned property that was an old coal-fired power plant. And it's over back on a road called Ampersea. And I've been working with Dr. Michelle Johnson on a community and land trust strategy on that property, which is owned by the Brownfield, but is heavily influenced and led 100% community-led engagement. In fact, she just calls me when she needs a tent. So that makes me feel incredibly passionate about the work that we're doing. Again, changing that dynamic and funding and empowering people to do the work that needs to be done. Lastly, in the Edison neighborhood, we supported a project within Washington Square as well that will also be another mixed use and housing project. All of these projects that we're doing with this awesome strategic site acquisitions all have to do with empowering local businesses and also building affordable housing. Next is our Pathways Home project, which Director Hoffman also touched on, which is an incredible project in terms of getting people from homelessness to home ownership. This also wraps into it the zoning policy that Deputy City Manager Lamb mentioned. So why zoning? Why is zoning important? So back in 2005, and I'm going to make this as brief and as technically simple as I can. Back in 2005, our zoning code was updated. It was updated in an extremely suburban way, a very suburban way for an urban place. Our parcels where our houses are built are very narrow. Many of the houses in our built out neighborhoods were anywhere between 33 feet and 42 feet wide. So lots of the similar housing stock that was built in our core neighborhoods, but so much of that housing has been demolished. We see lots of land vacancies in the north side and the east side and in Edison. A few in Vine as well, or when we have a fire or anything that happens in the city. And what was the truth of it, the reason these lots were staying vacant for so long is because it was not legal to build a new house on those lots. They were too small. And so you would have to combine two of those parcels in order to build one house. So not only are we not able to build on a lot that we might have, two is we're de-densifying the city. We are literally taking away our tax base if we don't change that zoning. And it's also, much of the zoning had a large mismatch in terms of some zones did not have the right, some of them were just single family zoning. Single family zoning is very much, again, against density, against any sort of like duplexes or triplexes or, you know, anything that could assist in getting us the housing and the number of units that we need. And so we started to work first on how can we tweak some numbers, and we did a really large study with one of our employees who was doing his master's degree at Western, and he was getting his degree in the GIS and geography. And so he did a study of Edison, East Side and the North Side, and he calculated how many of those lots could not legally be built on. And it ended up being over 70% of those lots. And so we knew that we needed to turn these dials, right, and look at what that meant. And so in February of this year, we passed a simple text amendment to our zoning code, which now allows us to build on a lot as small as 33 feet wide anywhere in the city. And you are also allowed to build what's called an accessory dwelling unit. So you could have a tiny house or a small house or two houses on a lot or one above your garage. So you can now have multiple units on your lot as well, which we know could be an incredible wealth building strategy for our residents, not only because it could allow them to rent out a unit, but it could also allow them to save money if they were able to have a loved one that could also live on that parcel with them, and, you know, not have to go into assisted living or not live in a dorm somewhere, or, you know, any of those situations. If you can have multiple family members living with you on your parcel and be able to expand your home, all of those things we know are wealth building strategies. So much of that inspired by the Pathways Home project, because we knew we needed to do what was called an infill strategy. So when you hear this word infill and you want to know what that means we have lots and lots of vacant land in our city and we want to infill it with a new home. And this is another barrier that we saw was, how do you get land from the land bank, or how do you get land from the county or the city? And we started to think about what are the things that are really difficult for someone to potentially encounter. And so we thought about site plan review, getting an architect, building permits. How do you wrap that into a single package for someone, charge one price for all of it, and then be able to have it very shelf ready? And so the first project that we're doing with KNHS and Open Doors is this model duplex. So what we did is we partnered with a group called the Incremental Development Alliance, and we designed a duplex with them. And it has a pro forma that we've run by banks to see if they would, you know, finance it. And we've tried to get good comps for this duplex. And we're building our first 3 in Vine this year and next. We're going to be digging some basements this year. But we are super excited because guess experimenting on. We're experimenting on ourselves. We are taking the risk of figuring this thing out. And once we get it dialed in and perfect, then we can share it with our community. And that's what this journey is about, is how can we create single family homes, duplexes, that accessory dwelling unit I talked to you about, a 4-plex or even an 8-plex for someone to live in. And the city will pay for the architectural drawings and we'll get it pre-permitted for you. We can show you a map of these vacant lots, whether that's a land bank lot or a city lot, where these fit within the zoning and within the neighborhoods, and say, you know, this is one price and you get everything all together. And this is hopefully where we will be able to build any of the residents in our city, our community members, can then help us build up these units. And to assist with that, we've been working on this Housing for All initiative. Housing for All is a gap loan for small developers to be able to help with affordable housing. So we have set the bar at 4 units or more for our gap funding, and this is where we're seeing the most need in terms of affordable housing unit assistance as well, because a lot of times a developer will try to go to a bank and they'll try to get a loan, but if they want to do some deeper subsidized housing, and we're asking people to, to stick at some certain rental rates that we know meet our city income requirements, they need to borrow more money, or they need more equity in their project to make it work. And that's what this fund is for. And so far this year, we've gotten 3 applications. One application was to assist a low-income housing tax credit project. Another application was to help a group called the Young Kings and Queens that are building a really incredible youth component, but then also doing housing above. And so they're going to do 4 units above, and as well as the tiny houses of hope, and as well as another initiative through NACD. So we're really feeling like that all of these pieces, while I can talk to you about, well, we're working on this project or we're working on this project, I hope what you've seen is almost like a little waterfall approach to kind of each of these things, is that one project, like the strategic site acquisitions, has bled into another project, has bled into another, and each one of them has learned from the next about what we do. We needed to get land into the hands of the community, step 1. Step 2, we needed to break down barriers for people to build on the land that they have in the community. Step 3, we needed to help fund and finance those projects which are being built in the community. So each one of these things we've really been trying to learn from our experiences, and honest to God, couldn't be more grateful for the partnerships that we have, and for all of the what I call my entrepreneur developers who have allowed us to go on this journey with them and help us get some bumps and bruises along the way so that we can make it better the next time, and mentor each other through it as well. So happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
I'm stopping the screen share here, Madam President, so we can go back to seeing each other's faces.
Director Hopewell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Kick. Question in regards to the 140 housing units that were renovated or something. I wondered if we can get that number de-aggregated so that it talks about rehabs and renovations, and it talks about single-family homes that we got people in, because to me that they're not the same and we treat them the same. And I understand we're talking about investment in the single-family homes. I get it, but I think it's important for us to know how many homes we're creating for folks to be able to buy or gain or what have you in our community, along with those folks that we supported in staying in their homes. So I think that would be helpful to me. And then I know that you had talked a second ago about having designs available. So you're sort of in this duplex model. You're creating a model, a foundational format for people to use that that banks will partner with a developer on, and things of that nature. Is that pretty much what this duplex model design is. And
Yes.
okay. And are we doing that at all with some of these infill for single family homes that I know I understand the duplex is important. And I like this very, very much. One, I'm hoping that we also have a single family strategy for that, even though I think that this is the easiest entry into getting more affordable housing. So I don't want you to think I've forgotten that. The other piece is, are we seeing the same small developers? Are we enabling new developers and helping create wealth for people of color and people within those neighborhoods? People that live on the street that may have some of those vacant spots, things of that nature. And my last thing, and I'll just make this statement, part of the reason that we started the Foundation for Excellence was to really be able to do some of the things you're talking about, experiment, try some things, think bigger. And as I talked with you and Deputy City Manager Lamb last week, it's that sort of thinking that we need to be thinking as big as the promise. We need to be thinking as big as the Foundation for Excellence. And that's always going to be my challenge to staff. Where are we trying things? What are we thinking about doing differently? Where can we have new impacts and most impacts? So with that, I'll be quiet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for that. Because this gives me the opportunity to say, why the duplex? Why did we start with that? We did start with the duplex because we did see it as a wealth building opportunity. If one person can build a duplex and they can rent out the other side, it becomes a source of income for them, and it can be a wealth building opportunity, which can be life-changing. So that was one other way to think about the accessory dwelling unit. Yes, we do have single family home models that we will also offer, but that's the reason we started with the duplex. Also, in terms of the small developer pool, the exciting thing that we've been funding for the past 3 years are coaching opportunities with the Incremental Development Alliance. And this is where we send our small developers to what's called the Developers Boot Camp. And it's a 3-day experience that they go through, and they learn how to do pro formas and their maintenance and operations, and make sure that their project cash flows. They have opportunities to speak with banks about their projects as well, and community development financing institutions. And so it gives them a very exciting place to be able to play with their project with a bunch of folks who are on the same level as they are. And what Antonio Mitchell, who is our community investment manager, if you have not met him before, who's really my my partner in this work, he and I offered that up. So we have a kind of a graduated class of mentors, and we asked each of them if they had another person in their group and in their network to lift them up and bring them into our small development boot camps. And so we've recently started with another whole group of, again, this is very grassroots, this is very neighborhood grown cohorts of sorts that we are building. I think one of the biggest barriers we have is letting people know that this is actually occurring at the city, that my staff is available for this work, that our doors are open, that we do this, that we are excited about helping people with their projects in this way, and that we have resources to do it. So I think that's probably one of our biggest barriers, is trying to get the word out more so that we have these opportunities available So we've been trying to use our past graduates and their networks to help them come to us too.
Yeah. So one of the things I would, and just in response to that, and I think you're very correct that connecting people with the opportunity is really part of that work that has to happen. But I'm hoping that I'm hoping that we'll be thinking about non-traditional folks as well, so that some individuals in our community have said, yeah, I want to be a developer, I want to do this sort of work. You may have others that hadn't even thought about this necessarily, haven't been exposed to the opportunity, and they may live on that street, and we've talked about this, live on that street and see that vacant lot all the time and say, geez, I wish somebody would do something about it. And then they don't think that could be them, but maybe it could be them. And maybe it builds
very much could be them.
Build their street and that sort of thing. So an all-out press on that, I think, would make sense. So anyway.
Thank you.
I just want to understand
real quick. Or someone else speaking?
Go ahead, Director Washington, and my apologies.
Yeah, so in kind of relation to Mr. Hopewell's last comment, Rebecca, and I remember your fellowship, and it was wonderful to be a part of sitting in and you sharing it with some of us. Is there a thought of like a package deal? So I wonder, so you can't build on this land. They tear these houses down, and then the footprint changes on how you can build something, and you can't build on it. One, is that land cheaper then? Does that land become like super cheap because you can't do anything on it? One. And then two, is there a thought of package deals? Bringing folks in, as we're talking about, getting them up to speed on thoughts of these developments, but already having a pre-fixed idea about what will go on there. Whether it's container home, I don't know, there's all kinds of different types of housing, but is there something that one, we know can go on there? Two, that then becomes a bit of a package deal, packaged up with the land and this opportunity at a place to live?
Thank you for that, Yvonne. Yeah, I do envision, especially once we get these accessory dwelling units, the single family homes and the duplexes really dialed in after we've built them this year. I would love to be able to partner with the land bank to do something like that, so that when someone has that piece of land, I think we've got two things, right? We've got landowners that we need to get the word out to, that we have packages and we know what can be built on those parcels of land. And then we have land that is in hands of the county or the city to market that in a package and be able to understand, like, you could build 3 different things on this parcel. It could be a duplex and a garage unit. You could actually get 3 units, on a site. It could be a 4-plex, or, and then you have a couple choices and you could spend X or you could spend Y. I think that's kind of the excitement of the job, and the puzzle pieces right now is trying to figure that out and see what community members are excited about, and excited about seeing in their neighborhoods. It's also, I think that's why it's so critical that this is a grassroots led development, because that's where the market response is going to be the best, right? I don't want this to be seen as some sort of, quick, you can get this land in this neighborhood and it's cheap and you could build here, or something like that. The land certainly is, it's not necessarily less expensive because it can't be built on. Assessing land is a very strange thing that I've been learning about this year. Kind of is what it is. It's and I think that's why we're trying to not think of it sort of in that, I don't know, not in a commercial way.
Yeah, and I understand. I definitely understand it, and I appreciate your being extremely sensitive, trying to answer that. I get it. Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, now that I look at it, it's going to be one way or the other. So on one instance, you're helping people get in and stuff, but on
Yeah.
the other instance, you've got some real savvy people out there that might try to buy
Yeah.
everything up because it's cheap, and then we don't get what we're after. So
Yeah, right. And that's why it's just so critical. Like I've partnered with a very specific group of people, Director Hoffman. You know, like we've really like have a strategy and you know what we're trying to accomplish kind of first for the community, and if there's something left, like great for the market. But I think that's also why the folks that we're coaching and that we're working with from the neighborhoods, I think to Director Hopewell's point, like I do want to make sure we're getting to people who have vacant land in the neighborhood so that they know that this opportunity could be available for them as well. I think that's really critical. But yeah, I think I'm really trying to keep it close and in the neighborhood and not make anyone else too aware. Just, gosh, I hope that makes sense.
made a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, strong anti-gentrification strategy trying to go on here. Strong.
Director Urban. Director Urban, you have to unmute, please.
There.
There you go.
That better? Well,
Yeah.
what Rachel has touched upon is very very critical. All the initiatives that she's been talking about, I see that she's stressing building community. The first examples of some of these things that are happening, the duplexes, the quadruplexes, the accessory dwelling units and so forth, really have to be premier first-class examples of what could be duplicated, because a lot of folks who are more traditional, who have grown up in Kalamazoo and been here for many years, like the feeling of single-family residence neighborhoods and vacant lots that their kids can play on even though they don't own them, and kind of a spread out low density kind of lifestyle that seems to preserve their housing values the best. But these same folks who are concerned about that also have a keen awareness or a growing awareness of the need to build community in a more dense way. So a way to kind of come over to overcome some of the anxieties that some of these folks feel is to have really good examples of community support for whatever, one, the project itself, and two, the support of the neighbors around it. So when Rebecca is talking to the work he's doing, I sense that that's foremost. It's, as she said, not commercial, it's community. So there's some traps out there waiting for us if we're not prepared when it comes to increasing the density of housing in the city. Just want to make sure we don't lose sight of what is potentially could be a lot of negativity that could arise. So far we've avoided it very well, but I can see where we have to be able to counter it if it arises in the future.
Thank you. Director Huevos.
Thank you. So to follow up on that a little bit, is there any protections for this land or the way that you're currently, the model that you currently have, so that some of these outside forces that you're trying to kind of avoid to swoop on in? Is there anything in the plan for that currently?
Unfortunately, because if it's not in our city hands, no, I don't have any control. It's the private market. I am trying to partner with the land bank, and the land bank has been doing a lot of really good work. with the Northside Association for Community Development around their land. I have worked, I started a community benefits agreement with Maddie Jordan Woods for developers who want to purchase land bank land in the North Side, which is just in its infancy. It's just starting, but it could be a model for other land bank properties in the city. So I'm hoping there that also I did have a conversation with Kurama and Sandy at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation about their impact fund, and that I'm hoping that they might consider, again, the use of a community benefits agreement. If you are seeking that funding, you know, what is the community benefiting when you're using that funding in a development? I think each one of us have to think about that community benefits agreement, like kind of in our own lens. And if we're giving funding, and if we're doing grant making, what does that mean? And how does the community truly benefit when we put this kind of funding into our projects? We recently, in our Brownfield Authority, we passed what's called an incentives policy. And so we have a very rigorous criteria that you fit into. You have to kind of start checking boxes. The more years of tax increment financing that you want to put back into your project, then we ask how you align with Imagine Kalamazoo and how you align with affordable housing criteria as well, to get those kinds of incentives. So if you ask for incentives, but the city doesn't own the land, we have a little bit of dials that we have there. If we own the land, we've got a little bit more room there, you know, asking about the project. But in some of course, the private owned land, you know, unless they come to us for financing, we don't have much control. But thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to thank Ms. Lamb and Director Kick for your presentation, but also the deliberateness in your planning for this process. I have a couple comments and a couple questions. The first one is it's your commitment to community heartens me, and I just thank you on behalf of our community for seeing this project through that lens. A couple of the aforementioned comments by some of the other directors really did speak what was on my heart. I am curious about some of the demographics with the development teams that have gone through the process and that are looking to extend the process through their mentorship of others. We just know, we as an industry realize that very often when we look for people within our own circle looks like us. So whether that's advertent or not, it's how it happens. And so when I hear that we're looking to recruit just in terms of reaching out interpersonally, that always strikes a chord with me. So I just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure it probably is, that that's on your radar and making sure we have controls in place to ensure that the diversity happens. What I don't want to see is that we inadvertently gentrify our city because there are those who didn't, and you all said that, but I'm just really underscoring what in your comment, how I received it. Because those who were looking to expand or delve into something new or just didn't have the resources. I got some feedback anecdotally regarding a little bit off topic, but I promise I'll circle back around, regarding the process for the COVID pandemic, and I'm gonna flub the title, support that was offered through the United Way. And when I saw the information myself, there was only 6% that were African Americans, and I had an African American female who came to me and said, I struggled with the application. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't have the resources. I didn't know who to call, and I was rejected. And so it made me wonder how many other African Americans struggled, or other different people of color. And so I guess my next question is, what is the process for those who do struggle or who don't know about it, who need help with applications, who might not have the wherewithal. I just want to make sure that there's a place for them in this process. So again, we don't end up inadvertently gentrifying our community, that it maintains its commitment to a diversity and inclusion. Yeah. So I would like to hear you talk a little bit about the recruitment process and the demographics for the development team. And if you don't have that in front of you, that's okay. I mean, we can also talk
Right.
about it, but I wanted to just make sure it's on your radar.
Oh, Dr. Graham-Williams, thank you so much for bringing that up. I actually didn't know if it was appropriate for me to get into those details or if you would like me to, but I'm so proud of everyone that we've helped and who we are helping. And I quickly scratched down a list, and we actually have a couple of really young developers as well, which are also really fun. You may know one of them. His name is Jamari Bogan. Apparently he carried a football for a little while as well. We are assisting him with an incredible development in the city of Kalamazoo. I can't really talk too much about it unless you already know from him personally, but it is a little bit confidential right now. I don't want to spoil his plans. I have been working with Ricky and Yvonne Thrash at Anabays on their project, and Ricky is also a graduate of our Small Developer Bootcamp, as well as Twyla Lockett-Jones, who also went through our Minority Contractors group. Gwendolyn Hooker has also participated. We recently extended a scholarship to Miss Takesha Johnson as well from Young Kings and Queens to help her with her project. So right now, our graduate class only has one white developer. His name is Kyle Gulau. He also owns several buildings in the north side, Burdick Street. But right now, that is our class that we're asking to kind of bring in the next wave of folks. So I'm looking forward to also, there's a gentleman, he's actually a realtor over in Edison, and Terry, I met him at a Ywca conference, and we've also extended a scholarship to him to join our small developer boot camp. But certainly would love to see, more Eastsiders and Edison as well kind of join our recruits and get into some of those small developer boot camps. But right now it's really concentrated in our north side, because Maddie is just really, really good at getting the word out and making sure that her developer entrepreneurs are really strong in her neighborhood as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both for what you do. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Madam President, it looks like we have no more questions or comments.
I have a comment. I have a comment. A lot of times when, I went out.
We got you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can see you.
Okay. A lot of times when we talk about community, and you have all these different groups starting up projects, and I hear the word community be thrown out there a whole lot, because it's so important to involve the community, especially with housing projects and businesses and things of that nature. And one of the things that I just want to throw out there, a lot of times when organizations that form different projects and stuff, especially when it comes to funding, and they go to minority communities or go to communities that are struggling, they go to the neighborhood associations, or they go to who they think are the community leaders, as if the leaders represent the whole community. And so when you talk about, to me, involving the community, one person cannot represent the whole community. And I'm saying that basically because where I work, I'm considered a community a leader as well. But at the same time, I constantly let people know I don't represent the whole organization that I work for. I don't represent every minority in my community. I'm just one out of many. So, you know, the names that you mentioned, one of them was my brother, and I'm glad that he's involved in it. And everybody you mentioned, I think, are very good people. They're good representation. A lot of times, to me, community, when you're in the planning stages of projects, to me, community are often the people that you're trying to help. They're usually the residents who are homeless. They're usually the ones who struggling with unemployment. They're usually the ones that got a story to tell. You know, so I just would like to see it be more diverse in that capacity. I'm not saying you don't want to involve community leaders, because you definitely do, but you also want diversity within that community on various levels, instead of just handpicking who some people might identify as the community leader, when there's so many people that's involved in the overall project. There's so many people that's going to be affected by the outcome. There's so many people that have a voice that's not being heard. And so, you know, you're connected in a good way, but I just want you to keep in mind that there's various levels of being connected in the community, especially grassroots.
That's a wonderful reminder. Thank you so much, Director Taylor. I do appreciate your words so much.
Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. Everything I heard is awesome. So congratulations on the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Shall I take us back? Well, I can take us back to the agenda if we are ready. And I want to thank Director Hoffman for reaching out and taking the time to really, you know, open your heart in this presentation to the board. I thought it was, if I can be a thermometer for the board, a roaring success. And Director Kick and DCM Lamb, not the first nor the last time that we will be presenting together, but thank you so much. I know these deep dives are, you know, you're opening up incredible amounts of expertise, and every part of this equation has a backstory you could talk for hours on. I thought it was, you know, somebody who is partially involved with this, I still am always learning more, and I thought it was really digestible and understandable. So thank you all very much. And I will screen share back to the agenda. Madam President, we are on to regular agenda. So that's item D1, approval of the 2021 board and committee meetings. And I can jump down to that item here. And then screen share. And that appears to be up for everyone to see. So the background here is that in the first year we were accommodating people's schedule and really just trying to make everything work the best we can. This year we went to a fixed schedule for board and committee meetings. Those are Mondays, and they were placed between city commission meetings and now the Foundation for Excellence Investment Subcommittee meetings, which are quarterly, to just make it possible that we can conduct our business with so many moving parts each year. So this was considered a success. We had fantastic attendance this year, better really than ever even before. And so I'll scroll down here to the proposed schedule in 2021. And again, this is so important because we are subject to Open Meetings Act regulations. So this needs to be, this being our last planned, certainly, but probably our last board meeting of the year, has to be approved before our next meeting next year, and then posted and used subsequently. So you'll see we stick with quarterly finance and executive committee meetings. And there's actually kind of an extra catch-up one in there as well, just because of the way that in the autumn time, because of budgeting. And then there are the 3 bylaw required board meetings, so April, October, and September and October. And then we've historically gone with a touch base work session opportunity to present or catch up or do any work we need in February. So we've got that on the books there as well for the 15th. So again, these are all Mondays. Side note on the meetings themselves, there has been the action. I'm sure Attorney Robinson could step in if he feels the need as I bungle this, but there was the action taken against the ability of Governor Whitmer to uphold some of the aspects of the executive order, which may affect our ability to meet by Zoom moving forward. Be the same as the ability for City Commission to meet by Zoom moving forward. So there's some TBDs and TBAs there. Until further notice, we continue to meet by Zoom as far as I know, and then if not, we would go back to probably a combination of online and then also using the community room as we have in the past. But so many things seem possible now, so we will wait and see exactly what it involves. But it'll be published this way, and then those notifications, of course, go out per Open Meetings Act well in advance of the meetings if there are changes or cancellations or what have you. So, so this would be approved by the board now and be adopted. And so scrolling back up here, that's the action that's being recommended.
Thank you, Steve. As you've all had an opportunity to look at the schedule in your packet, and also again right now, I am looking for a motion that the board approve the draft of the 2021 schedule of board and committee meetings.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Directors Anderson and Ritzema. It looks and sounds like. Is there any discussion?
Yes, this is Director Lundberg.
Yes, please.
I just want to name that February 15th is President's Day, which, I mean, we're meeting on a holiday today, or that some celebrate, but I know I probably won't be able to be there because of a family commitment, but you all can carry on without me, but I didn't know if that was true for anyone else.
Thank you, Director Lundberg. Yeah, I noticed that myself. Any other discussion?
Well, Madam President, would we like to include, that motion could include changing that to Tuesday the 16th? If President's Day is seen by a potential quorum, certainly for a work session, it seems like it may in fact be difficult to get. No disrespect to our presidents, that one didn't jump to mind when we were doing the scheduling, so.
Certainly. So let me amend that motion. Looking for a motion that we approve the 2021 schedule of the FFE board and committee meetings with the caveat that the Monday, February 15th, 2 p.m. work session is pushed to Tuesday, February 16th, so that we all may observe President's Day. Thank you again, Director Lundberg. Any further discussion on the new motion?
Well, I technically, in order to make sure that this is operating correctly, you probably need a withdrawal of the earlier motion and a new motion made as you've outlined it, President.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson.
So I withdraw the motion and move for the newly stated motion.
Thank you, Director Ritzema.
Support that.
Someone supported it. I'm not sure who that was. I'm trying to scroll to see you.
I believe it was Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, answer with aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you all.
Madam President, thank you. Next item under the regular agenda is Director Terms of Office. And this is, I believe, the third full year that we've gone through this process now. So quick background on this is, without really delving in depth into the bylaws that I'm showing here, which are contained in the agenda packet, a quick verbal background is that because we were a new board, it was structured so that 1/3 of directors' terms came up each year in order to establish that regular turnover of 1/3 of directors required by the bylaws. So you'll remember way back at the beginning, those who began with this board, there was sort of the class 01, class 02, class 03. And so this year, we are going through that process again, and there are 4 directors. These are actually the class 01 directors. So yourself, Madam President, the at-large director, Nathan Dannison, and then Director Miller, neighborhood director for Oakland Winchell. I should say neighborhood director who happens to be Oakland Winchell, just to be clear that that's not a standing neighborhood appointment. And Director Washington, education director. And so the starting point here is to indicate interest and willingness to continue serving. And I can say that Directors Dannison, yourself, Madam President, and Director Miller, all very quickly and unequivocally conveyed your pleasure to serve and wish to continue serving. Director Washington, I wasn't able to connect with you in the meantime. I believe that the board would not.
Because I was so fast. I was so fast. It was automatic. I was jumping up and down.
I believe that's an affirmative that you would like to continue serving on the board, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes. Wonderful. So what that means is that the process requires that we go back to the stakeholder groups for each stakeholder director. So in this case, healthcare, education, and neighborhood. And that's with the governance facilitator, which is the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. And just like last time, there's a kind of a consultation with that stakeholder group to see if there's any outstanding concerns that would need to be addressed, or a desire to change direction or facilitate a change direction. And then with commission, it's the same way. So where we are now is that it's about a 90-day process with the Community Foundation. So we would expect to have, maybe before the first of the year, but with the holiday, most likely sometime in January, a piece coming back to executive committee as an update, and then next steps as needed, and then that would be baked into the next subsequent board meeting. And then, as you know, the annual meeting is appointments, elections, and then committee membership. So all that gets done in April. And I appreciate everyone's patience. I know this seems like we just did this yesterday, but the way that it's set up to have all this due diligence behind each step requires us to take action in October. So we have got everything we need here. It was recommended that the board conduct its annual review. I suppose there's opportunity for comments or questions at this point. Otherwise, when ready, we can advance to the next regular agenda item.
I just wanted to say, I think it's awesome that everybody still wants to stay on the board. I think that's a vote of confidence. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just,
Hopewell.
Yeah, thank you. The process seems a little cumbersome, and I know it's bylaws and what have you. And, and it would seem to me that it'd be nice if we reached out to these organizations beforehand to make sure they don't have any problem. And then if the director opts to stay, then it's really them telling us they want to stay, and they're here. So it just seems so odd to me that if they've been appointed by that group should speak up or first, I think, and then We talked to the director. I don't know, just interesting. Whatever. I guess it works, but it just seems odd to me.
I agree with that.
As do I.
I'm not saying, I don't know that we do anything. I mean, it could be looked into to see if there's any other ways to just smooth it out. I want them, certainly the groups that have asked folks to serve, to have some type of voice. It just seems a little odd, the way it happens. I don't know, but whatever.
Steve, is there an opportunity for us to take a look at the process? I don't have the bylaws in front of me on this piece, obviously, but I think that a very good point has been made.
May I ask a quick question? I believe since this is the third year that we've done the annual review, is this technically because I know there was ones that needed to be, like for instance, with mine, it was at that first year and then on to a 3-year. If we're all at 3-year now, would it make sense to review that now? How we do that? Or maybe I'm moving ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'm trying to wrap around how we would do that at this point. If there's people who have already been renewed, for lack of a better way to put it, I apologize.
Excellent question, Director Calderon-Huezo. And I brought up the board table, which is part of the agenda packet. And quick overview here, kind of from left to right, is there's the first 3 columns, name, and then term rotation. You're correct. Everyone is now on a 3-year rotation because all the initial 1- and 2-year terms have been used up, if you will. And then any unfilled terms which were filled by another appointment then go to the 3-year term. Keeping in mind that we had, just to make sure that we had the approximately 1/3 board turning over each year. You can see them color coded here in different shades of green, and then the class numbers there. So quick note here on the unfilled or uncompleted terms, I guess they would be, is that for Directors Hoffman and Directors Lomberg, they are the same reappointment date as yourself, Director Calderon-Huezo, because they came in on that same cycle, even though they were. So I apologize for how tedious this seems. To a question that, Madam President, you asked at the Executive Committee meeting, there was a mistake in the expiration date, and I'm glad you brought it up. The mistake wasn't just that your year was different from those around you. It's that for whatever reason, they were all the wrong date. They were all basically one term too long. So these have been corrected based on the original Gantt chart that was provided by the governance facilitator. So these are all now correct. And then the terms with partial term here again shows everyone. So yourselves who are available have just reiterated your interest in serving. You had 2 full 3-year terms. The others who had a 1- or 2-year first term, that didn't count toward the term limit per the bylaw. So that's why it says 2 of 3, for example. That's just a way of us tracking, because again, there are, as you've heard, many, many moving parts. And then the term limits are listed there on the right. To the first and broader question, I heard, I think, 4 directors very quickly support the idea of staff looking into what that would look like to kind of invert the process. And I think there's quite a bit of merit to that. And I don't see any harm in looking into it and providing a memorandum or report back to the board assuming winter would be, leading up to our next meeting would be an appropriate time. So happy to do that. And I'm hearing the overall spirit is to streamline it and keep the rigorousness and the due diligence, and of course adhere to all the bylaws and articles as they were established, but to see if we can streamline it and just create a clarity at the end of the year based on the intention of a director.
Madam
I'd
Chair.
be happy to look into that.
Yes, Director Hopewell.
Yeah, and I just want to say it's not my intent to say what we specifically do. I was just trying to call out the oddity, and if there's a way to streamline it in whatever way, whether it's that you talk to the board, then the director, whether you talk to them both at the same time or whatever. It was just a thought. So I don't want everybody to get way down the road. It was just seemed odd. So.
Director Hopewell, that is exactly how I took it. Thank you, though.
Same here.
I think the mayor.
Williams, I have a question.
Yes, Mayor, go ahead.
Okay, so just to think about this, we could go back and ask the stakeholder groups to do their evaluation, however long that takes, which Mr. Brown, you said sometimes takes a while, and then come back and then ask the director if they want to serve again, and they say, no, I don't. So then we put that whole process, you know, in front of that. It seemed like we do have to know whether the director wants to serve again before we, you know, ask the foundation to go through their, you know, evaluation process, whatever that is. So just another thought.
Yeah, it could be done simultaneous though. You know, you can ask, you know, both of them simultaneous, and then you don't have all of this weight. And you may start with the director, sure. I mean, it's always up to them whether they want to serve. But now we've done it at, Steve has called them. Now we're talking about it at this meeting, which I don't think do we appoint the director, Steve? Or does it all come through the commission?
So the process is that the governance facilitator, you know, let's just say there's a new director, would then bring in a recommendation for that director to the city commission. The city commission then recommends that to the board, and the board approves it. In that case, the board has a yay or nay on the stakeholder directors. Yeah. The ex officios are ex officio, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and city manager, and then at-large director is appointed directly by the commission. There's no mention of a board action on that in the bylaws.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that we're going to be another few months for those guys to go through their thing. Whereas, you know, it seems like all of that could be done beforehand, then brought to us to say, okay, yep, everybody's agreed, place the person. That's all I'm saying. So, good luck. I don't get to vote on them anyway. Have fun.
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. Thank you, former Mayor Hopewell.
Okay.
Thank you, former Mayor Hopewell. I didn't realize I was still muted.
So, Madam President, I believe we are ready to move on. Thank you very much for the discussion. I've made notes and can circle back on those topics. And I'm just going to keep scrolling down here because we're deep in the agenda at this point. So, pleasure of staff to once again bring a recommended Foundation for Excellence activity budget to the board. This is a continuation of previous years where, again, we're not requesting a dispersal from the foundation to the city. We're still operating on grant dollars directly to the city, but we are building the muscle memory of that behavior, of that action by the foundation, and of course the approval of alignment is of the activities with Imagine Kalamazoo, with the Articles of Incorporation, and with the mission of the foundation is crucial and is required. Insofar as that's concerned, you know, really the most important thing for this whole process is that we're doing the work that it was established to do in partnership with the city. So a couple notes here, and then I'll jump back to the PowerPoint presentation, is that in the packet, which is, you know, available to the public as well as to board members in your packet, I'm scrolling down here, is the transmittal memo. This contains in paper format, letter format, history so far from 2017 to 2020, as well as the proposed 2021 activity. And then it shows the methodology and rationale behind the tax reduction calculation and budget stabilization, as well as details on aspirational projects and programs. Of course, as we saw today with the housing presentation, these details could be pages and pages long. So these are kind of executive summaries for each activity, and then as needed points to places usually online where there's more and more up-to-date and kept up-to-date information on those programs. So the action that will be required, requested, is an approval of the budget for Foundation for Excellence activities of the City of Kalamazoo in the amount of $25,798,714, and concurred with the methodology in detail. And then there's a breakdown of those three. So just to set the table for where we are, and then I will bring up the PowerPoint presentation. And can you see this okay? Or is it still, I believe it just kicked me out. So let me bring the PowerPoint back up. So, okay, so we're going to start. There's just two quick items that were housekeeping items of projects that we weren't able to touch on at the last meeting. So we put together with affordable housing. One is infrastructure investment, and hopefully anyone who's been driving around or certainly walking or on your bike, like myself, you've noticed a lot of new concrete in the city of Kalamazoo on the sidewalks, and that's because more than 2 miles of actual new pour has been installed since 2019. So as you'll see in this image here, this slab of new concrete here, these 4 squares, and it goes into older concrete. So 2 miles of actual new concrete, and this is, piecemeal throughout the city where it was identified by usually citizens by way of walking audits, as well as the Imagine Kalamazoo process as being needed. And these align with safe routes to school, as well as with trying to be within a 1/4 mile of a community asset, which can include a school, it can include a major service provider, a culture institution, or a business node. So hopefully you're starting to see those. We have another mile planned next year. This is, heavy work. It takes a long time to do, and so it's very much to the credit of Director Baker and our engineer, Anthony Ladd, Deputy Director Anthony Ladd, of getting this work done. And so we also have some interesting testimonials to share in the newsletter when this comes out in November, some photographs of before and after, which really show that as mundane as sidewalks may seem, if you're say a senior neighbor of some school-age children and you're trying to snowplow a sidewalk that was as much grass as sidewalk just so the kids can get to school, this really means a lot. And so we're proud to do that work. So that's update on sidewalks. Just wanted to make sure I brought that up. And also water service replacements. This is a project that we help fund each year. We have to date funded approximately 10% of the replacements since 2017. And there's 1,850 replacements. So I want to be very clear that Director Baker and his staff have done pretty fantastic things in leveraging very, very significant amounts of money through grants. And then the bulk of this really comes down to ratepayers, so people who in Kalamazoo, we do have very, very affordable, I believe the 2nd or 3rd lowest water rates in the state, but are paying for the lead service replacements to be done. But Foundation for Excellence contributes 10%, which does help get the work done, helps accelerate it from what they say would have been a 100-year replacement schedule down to about 20. They're averaging about 500 replacements per year. And I can flip to this next slide here. So this was last updated a minute ago, but this was in mid-September. So by the end of the year, they were very confident that we'll get to the 500 replacements for 2020. And then as you'll see in the map here, they're color-coded by year. So the purple, the orange, and the green are different years of replacement activity. But it goes to show the scale of this work, right? It's all across the city. And it's, 500, you think of 500 houses of anything, the 500 houses where you're digging up the street, often a piece of the curb lawn to replace that water service. So again, heavy work, it takes its time, but important work. And we have very, very good water quality in Kalamazoo. And, this just continues the investment in that to make sure that we have fantastic water. So wanted to highlight that as promised. And going to skip forward here because the thing is, this was touched on quite movingly by Director Hoffman as well as Director Kick and DCM Lamb, is the reason why we do all this, right? And so I want to again highlight the mission of the Foundation for Excellence, which was decided by a subcommittee a couple of years ago. We bring it up every time. We want to stay focused on it. And that goes hand in hand with the Articles of Incorporation, which established the marching orders for the foundation, its reason for existing, and its charge to fulfill, creating long-term fiscal stability for the city through a good governance approach, continuing to provide exceptional core municipal services. So those would include sometimes things like sidewalks, agendering generational poverty, promoting youth development, employment for youth, underemployment, and unemployment individuals and persons seeking reentry into the Kalamazoo community, addressing capital and human infrastructure improvements, especially in core neighborhoods, and developing and implementing neighborhood improvements, particularly through the neighborhood plans, which are, I believe we've adopted 7, and we're working on several more at the moment to have the voice of the neighborhood, a broad voice, to your point as well, Director Taylor, a grassroots voice, really shape the work in each neighborhood. With this, we'll point to the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 10 strategic goals. I won't read these out. We're all familiar, they're alphabetical order here, not how they're typically presented. We're familiar with them all by now. And these are touched on by many of the projects. Multiple projects touch on multiple goals very often. And some of them we've really invested profoundly in compared to others. Youth development, one. Economic vitality is another. Safe community through lead services, shared prosperity, inviting public places, complete neighborhoods. So a multi-layered requirement for the foundation that really we hope that board members, community members, and certainly commissioners see lived out through the projects and programs that staff are bringing forward from departments and in partnership with external partners each year. So I'm going to make sure I'm in full screen here. This is the aspirational budget that was seen earlier this fall, September 14th, by the board. And so here you see a line item of projects and programs. Digital Access for All is included for next year. It was created this year, didn't exist last year. Economic Development last year was operating from a 2019 allocation, so existed, but not all programs receive funding in each fiscal year. So we're back to nearly $2 million investment next year. And again, that was covered at the September meeting. And I've got a chart here which shows the breakdown of investment to date by goal area. And one note is that affordable housing, you'll see on the right, that large gray, darker gray slice. Affordable housing isn't an Imagine Kalamazoo goal in name per se, next to shared prosperity and the others, but it's such a significant amount of what we do, and it's such a big part of economic vitality as the goal that we kind of put it along with. It has affinity to, of course, some of the other goals, shared prosperity, development, you name it. It's, as was said today, the foundation for so much what happens. But so you can see a breakdown of where the activities have been. And to the top level budget description here, you'll see something which is, a moment for reflection and celebration, and certainly a milestone, really unlike any that we've seen in the city recently, which is that through this fiscal year, so through the end of 2020, there's been $95 million of Foundation for Excellence activity through city departments in partnership with outside organizations. And this year, with a recommendation of $25.786 million, that puts us well past $100 million of activity, past $120 million really. And it's for staff, I can speak for myself. It's humbling and in a sense mind-boggling to think of what is now possible. The programs and projects that we're able to present to yourselves and to the Foundation for, to the City Commission, which 5 years ago wouldn't have been conceivable. And the work is we're going into 4th full year, well underway. So much more to do, so much more to go. Nobody's patting themselves on the back yet, but it's a moment to realize that we're full steam ahead. And so I just wanted to contribute that sentiment to the presentation today. The overall view of activities is as what you have before you. These are the 3 areas required for Foundation for Excellence activity. So aspirational projects, budget stabilization, and tax reduction. And I will move to a familiar slide, but one that it was said recently, and I'll probably just take this phrase because it makes so much sense, is that communications is a bucket that never stays full. And so we are always trying to, we just always have to stay at it. We always have to share the message, share the data, create new tools, build ambassadorships, so that people are having personal experiences with the work of the foundation that they can authentically and emotionally speak about themselves to others in the community. What you have in front of you here are a few of the strategies we've deployed over the past 3 or 4 years. The Imagine Kalamazoo website, which is kept up to date really on a week-to-week basis. Social media, where anyone in the community can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and now I understand we're on LinkedIn, which is a great addition to that portfolio of options. We've done what are called explainer videos to just say what the work is and say how it impacts people. The dashboard from last year, as you'll remember, that it's the map of the city where we can click onto on a neighborhood. We can click on a strategic goal and we can see where those dollars are invested. That's being prepared for an update right now, which should be ready in November. When we launch the newsletter, which is really the comprehensive kind of durable document that we put out and mail to just about 30,000 addresses in the city. It's the thing that people can keep and hold on to, which is showing in detail the work of the foundation, its value alignment. And this year, our focus is on testimonial and outcome and impact. So it may be all well and good that I come before you and present with what the foundation and the city are doing, but that certainly has its limits, and it's a lot more interesting when someone who has participated in a program or been impacted by it just tells us what their experience has been. And so we are very, very active in interviewing and speaking with people who have participated in programs or been impacted by them, so that to the greatest extent possible, the community can hear itself in its own words in those regards. And we're proud to make that pivot this year, so that the newsletter just has a different kind of character and different approach to it. So you can look forward to that in November, hopefully when mailboxes are a little less full than they are in October, and everybody can receive that and have some time to read through it. So the communications is a big deal for everything that we've seen, making sure that we get the word out and we get it out in multiple ways and in ways that make sense to people in the community. I'm going to end the PowerPoint here and go back to the transmittal memo. What I wanted to also do while I'm doing this is highlight and just lift up the work of staff. So Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb, who I work with closely, my supervisor, as a matter of fact, City Manager Jim Ritzma, really, there's almost not a day goes by that we aren't really fully invested in conversations and decisions that impact this work. And there's other members of the city staff who directly every day are involved with this. Those are Katie Riley, the neighborhood activator and engagement specialist, Kevin Ford, the shared prosperity Kalamazoo coordinator, Chad Wendt, the youth development coordinator at the Parks and Rec Department. And joining us this May in a very challenging time to shift any careers is Carrie Lynn Williams, who is a grant specialist, and she's added tremendous knowledge and experience and know-how to the city. We're fortunate kind of from the FFE standpoint to benefit from her work as well. And then really where the kudos go out to are the hundreds, the 600 plus city workers who are oftentimes not seen by the public or ourselves, but are hard at it all the time in all these areas of activity, doing the work, investing the time and the passion, and make sure that the Imagine Kalamazoo goals are brought to life and fulfilled over those 10 years that the plan is active before it's renewed with citizen input. So really just can't thank my colleagues enough and coworkers enough, and I'm very appreciative of being able to do this work with everyone. So I will, with that, scroll back down to the transmittal memo and reiterate the activity is $25,798,714 for fiscal year 2021. And the actions requested is to approve, I'll leave the screen here, approve this activity for the City of Kalamazoo for the 2021 fiscal year. And with that, Adam, that concludes the presentation. I appreciate the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions or comments? I don't see or hear any at this point. So did I miss someone? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, so I will call for a motion that the Foundation for Excellence Board of Directors approves the 2021 budget for the FFE activities of the City of Kalamazoo of $25,798,714, having concurred with its methodology and detail. Mr. Robinson, do I need to continue?
That sets the motion, and you just ask somebody to make that motion.
All right, looking for someone to make the motion, please.
Stephanie, so moved.
Thank you, Director Hoffman.
Support.
Thank you, Director Hess. Is there any discussion as the move has been properly made and seconded? And bear with me, I'm trying to look for hands. Hearing none. All in favor, answer with aye. I apologize. No, I apologize. Mayor, I saw you.
No, I'm good.
Are you certain it's okay? We have time? Okay. My apologies, Mayor. All in favor, answer with aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you all.
Madam President, thank you. We are on to public comment, and I believe Joe Ywca from IT has been listening. If any public comments were registered.
We have no public comments at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Board member comments. Just hold them high. I'm getting to you. Yes, Director Miller, thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to say, in light of the last couple of weeks, to tell Mayor Anderson and the commissioners and city manager to please hang in there. We've had some tough times, and I think and I believe actually that a lot of the city of Kalamazoo supports you and what you're doing. We just don't speak out enough about it. We should. If you want some love letters, I'll start some coming to you. Take care. Thank you.
Here, I second that. Thank you so much for articulating, Director Miller, exactly how I was feeling myself. Thank you. Any other board member comment? Thank you all for all. Yes, I see you, Mayor.
Okay, so I was just going to say one quick thing is that I feel like this activity and us doing it together is like having literally a 2.25 hour prayer session. So in some ways, you know, it's exhausting, but I guess good prayer can be exhausting while it's uplifting. So anyway, I appreciate all of us, you know, doing this prayer for our community together.
I would like to make one comment.
Yes,
I'll
Director.
make it very quick. I mean, I know it's been a long
You
meeting.
don't have to be quick. Go ahead.
I would just like to thank you and other members, Dr. Grams-Williams, for bringing up the conversation around diversion, equity, inclusion, making sure that, you know, once again, the things that we're getting involved in are having the appropriate impact that we want them to have versus not just the intent that we choose for them. Thank you, Ms. Stephanie, for the work that you do, because I truly believe that that is rooted in that impact on the community and the members of the community that you serve. I would like to just make a comment. I would like to continue the conversation on being inclusive with the programs that the Foundation for Excellence is funding and is a part of. I know that we began the conversation around accessibility for the application for instance, the business loan that was available. And I would like to revisit that at some point. And if it's possible to maybe talk about that at another time or personally, I would like to do that because I definitely don't want that to just become a point and then have it kind of brushed under the rug. Like we touched on it, but we didn't do any action on it. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you.
Thank you, Director Calderon-Hueza. Any other board member comment? I just want to give you all a heartfelt thought and note of gratitude just for being on this board. It is my privilege and honor to serve with you all. We don't always agree, but we are always respectful. This is a safe place, and we really truly embody the spirit of this board and this community. And I just love this time and this space that we have with each other, and I honor it, and I'm so fortunate and privileged, and hopefully be able to continue in this capacity or whatever capacity that the board deems appropriate for me. But I just, again, it is my privilege and honor, and not just the board, but also the staff who shows up and who takes my text messages and calls and always has time when I have a question or a need. I truly, truly thank you all from the bottom of my heart for what you do, and not only just what we do, but our intentions behind it, because it matters. So thank you all so much. I just wanted to say that. Seeing no other comments, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. We don't want to leave, do we?
No.
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we
support.
adjourn the meeting.
I hear you. Thank you, Director Miller.
I second.
And Director Taylor. I know that we don't have to vote on that, but again, be well, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you again for all you do. Take good care.
God bless everyone.
You as well. Thank you.